let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live, where we're talking about the hot topics of the day from a biblical, historical, and constitutional perspective. My name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach, and thrilled to be here with Tim Barton. He's a national speaker and pastor and president of WallBuilders, and David Barton. He's America's premier historian and our founder here at WallBuilders. Later in the program, our good friend Congressman Louie Gohmert will be with us. We're going to be talking about the border war. I know we say border crisis, guys, but man, it's more like a war down there right now.
Yeah, it is really out of control. It is confusion. And you know, we talked about this a little earlier. I don't expect it to change much because this is literally what so many of the national leaders have said they wanted. They wanted open borders, and to expect them to go in and try to slow this down or stop this or change this, that's just illogical. I don't see the administration doing that.
You know, guys, I was recently on a program with Nigel Farage, who was one of the leaders of the Brexit movement over in the UK. And one of the things he pointed out that is interesting to see where America is often on a similar path with England. Sometimes we're a year behind or 2 years behind, but it's very similar. And he actually went historically through some very interesting things with the Thatcher and the Reagans, and just went through several sequences of conservatives and liberals that we both had at the same time and flowing that direction. But he pointed out, if you go to 2019 in the UK, when they did open borders, and they literally had immigrants flooding in across, I mean, really invading everywhere in the UK, it was a massive problem. And he said, we were an embarrassment on the world stage. We knew we were an embarrassment. And then finally we took over and said, we're not doing that anymore. And we hadn't finished Brexit. And so we'd promised to do Brexit, and we're 3 or 4 years in and we haven't done Brexit. So he said, we took over, we closed our borders, we did Brexit. We're now independent. He says, I really see America in a very similar position where you're now being flooded. You're now being overrun, but you're coming to the place where the silent majority is about to step up and take over. He said, right now they need encouragement. They need a leader. They need somebody to follow. They need unity. And he outlined how it's very similar what's happening in America to what happened over in the UK. And it's so interesting that as you look right now, most Americans don't even recognize, I mean, guys, you point out it's kind of a war zone. They don't recognize how bad it is at the border. And the more people find out about it, the more they dislike what is happening. The fact that right now Kamala Harris is supposed to be the one in charge of the border, relatively speaking, and she hasn't even been to the southern border yet. The news media is not allowed to report on things. They have a lockdown.
But to go to my point, I mean, she hadn't been to the border because it's not a problem for her. This is what they wanted. This is what they've been having coming.
Well, and I would actually go the other direction. She's not going to the border because it's a big problem that would look bad for them. Now, it's not a problem as far as philosophy. They don't mind all these people coming in because they think they're going to get their votes. But they know it's a problem as far as perception. They know it's a problem, and this is not what the American people want. Because if they thought the American people aren't bothered by this, they'd be down there with their cameras every day, because this is the press they want. They don't want that press because they know this is not what the American people want, even though, Dad, to your point, they don't mind this open border philosophy because they think they're going to get those votes in the Democrat Party, whatever the case might be. The point is that as American people find out more about this, they are more dissatisfied with what the current administration is doing, which is where it was interesting with Nigel Farage, as he pointed out. This is why I think America is on the precipice of actually turning this whole thing around, which we would love to see. But first, sometimes we have to find out what the conditions really are. What is the battle really going on? And that's where somebody like Congressman Louie Gohmert is so good at helping us understand and see what's going on, because he's actually been to the border many times, taking lots of people down, trying to help other people understand the major crisis at the border.
All right, guys, quick break. We'll be right back. Congressman Louie Gohmert, our special guest today on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Revisions today often assert that our founding fathers were atheists or agnostics or deists. This charge is not new. In fact, Patrick Henry was even called a deist in his lifetime. Clearly, no one could question his patriotism, but Henry was hurt that they would question his Christianity. Against the charge that he was a deist, Patrick Henry thundered, "Deism, with me, is but another name for vice and depravity. I hear it is said by the deists that I am one of their number, and indeed, that some good people think I am no Christian. This thought gives me much more pain than being called a traitor. Being a Christian is a character which I prize far above all this world has or can boast." Patrick Henry was quick to refute the charge of deism and to declare his open belief as a Christian.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Always good to have Congressman Louie Gohmert. I think one of the greatest patriots in the nation. I love this guy and appreciate him so much and how much he stands in the gap for all of us across the country, but especially for those of us here in the great state of Texas. Louie, always good to have you, brother. Thanks for some time today.
It's great to be with you anytime, Rick. Thank you.
Well, hey, brother, you've been down to the border. You see how bad this is, and I couldn't help but think about you when Biden was saying in his speech last week the climate crisis, their created crisis, but practically ignored the real crisis on the border. How bad is the situation there, and what can we do while the administration just continues to ignore it or have policies that make it worse?
Well, you're right. I have been on the border and spent a lot of time there. And I thought his comments and it wasn't a joint session because only 200 people were invited, and I sure wasn't one of them. But, wasn't it great, the things he said about the problems at the border? Didn't that give you renewed hope? Yeah, well, I do get sarcastic time to time. But, how in the world you could just totally ignore the biggest crisis in the country right now? The pandemic is coming under control, and yet you've got the President of the United States, or whoever is putting the words in his teleprompter, just totally ignoring the biggest problem we've got. And so it is bad. And I've been down there, spent a lot of times, and I love our Texas delegation, our Republicans, because all of us went down together for a few days, actually more than that. But I said, okay, guys, if we're all going down there, you got to give me one night to take you down on what's really happening. No dog and pony, no security, just us. And we're going to go down there on the dirt roads right by the river, and you got to experience this firsthand. And they did. And
really,
yeah, oh yeah.
This was a group of members of Congress.
Members of Congress, and it kind of freaked out a couple of Border Patrol we ran into. But
wait, I'm sorry. I just had this image of you guys sneaking through the trees and being stopped by the Border Patrol thinking you were sneaking across the border.
Well, yeah. I mean, this one Border Patrolman was kinder to all the people that were coming across illegally than when he found out, we had several members of Congress down there and there was no security. But that's the only way you can truly experience things down there and see for yourself. Now, I hear from a number of Border Patrolmen, and, they send me stuff and let me know what's going on. And it's just getting worse and worse. And I think the fact that Biden didn't even mention it in that address at the Capitol, that's the best I can say. It wasn't, like I say, it wasn't a joint session. They invited 200 members, and you had to be appreciated by Biden or you weren't going to get an invitation, which I didn't, out of 535 members of the House and Senate. But that had to continue to lure greater numbers when he doesn't even mention it, doesn't it?
That's right.
Because most of us thought he'd have to say something about getting it under control, even though we knew he didn't mean it. His idea of getting it under control is we get more people to the border so we can ship them out and get them all over the country, which is actually shipping.
And when you say ship them out, you mean ship them in. I mean ship them, across the U.S., not ship them back to their countries.
Exactly. Right. And, being there all hours of the night, you see them coming up. They're looking to be picked up by the Border Patrol. You see them walking down these dirt roads. And by the way, the roads aren't open to the public. And that was one of the first things that one of the Border Patrol, this is a private. I'm going, here's our IDs. We're all members of the U.S. Congress. We're permitted to go where you go. And so that took them aback. But yeah, Rick, there's even a button that was installed. It's got a big tower, big red thing. You push the button, and it says in 3 different languages, push this button, and Border Patrol will be here to pick you up very quickly. And
oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So when I say get them shipped out, I don't mean out of the country. You're right. Thanks for making clear. Many of them show up, and they've got a name or they got an address or both. And I've watched them while the Border Patrol's starting at the other end to go through and process them and ask the questions they're required to ask. And that, they'll swap addresses. Oh, I like that address. I like this address. And I've seen them do the same thing with young children. Do you want to be like the mom on this, or do you want to be the father of this child? And they switch the kid around while the Border Patrolman is making the way down to them to ask questions. But as the Border Patrol have told me, the drug cartels consider the U.S. government to be their logistics because the drug cartels get them across the border, and then the U.S. government ships them wherever the drug cartels want them in the U.S. And so they've got addresses of somebody that supposedly is related, but invariably these are all at the direction or approval of the drug cartels. And as many of them have told the Border Patrolman late at night out there, because it's not on their list of questions, but they will be asked, some of them will ask, how much do you pay to be brought in? And it may be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And Border Patrolman will say in Spanish, well, you don't have that kind of money. Well, no, but they're going to let me work it off when I get where I'm going. Now, that'll either be through drug trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, but basically they become an indentured servant to the drug cartels, and the U.S. government is their chief accomplice in getting them where the drug cartels want them, and Biden's not going to say a thing about it, obviously.
Well, I was really surprised. Normally the Democrats do not criticize each other. Republicans, we do that all the time because we're so independent,
right.
But they don't criticize each other yet. I saw, Congressman Cuellar even say that that Biden ignoring this has got to stop. He's a Democrat from here, obviously part of your delegation. I served with him in the Texas House years ago. But so are there any? Are you starting to see some kinks in the armor, and maybe a chance that even some of the Democrats will begin to push on this? Well,
Henry has been pushing on it. And Henry Cuellar, he represents part of the border, and he understands just how bad this is. This is really atrocious. And he's hearing from people down there that are saying, look, we got to have some help. I mean, this is an invasion. And I know that's not what the New York Times or the Washington Post would call it. They're still trying to cover for the Democratic Party.
170,000 in 1 month that we know of. Yeah. Probably more like 250 or 300,000. Yeah, I'd call that an invasion.
Yeah, and exactly. Can you imagine if that had been the size of Pancho Villa's army back when John Pershing was sent to take the U.S. Army to chase Pershing around Mexico after he and his band came across and killed a few families. And that was just, a small number of Americans. Where you look at how many Americans fentanyl is killing, it's coming illegally across our southern border, how many people are victimized. Thank God most of the people coming across aren't killing anybody. They just want to come to improve their lives. But I know you're a believer, and as Christians, we ought to want to do things that are compassionate and caring. And I'm telling you, Rick, luring more people to leave their homes, leave their parents, come up here through, well, Doctors Without Borders had said maybe 25% or so of the young women are raped on the way. Why would you want to lure them through that? If we secured our border, and Trump had made tremendous progress toward that, if we secure our border, it dries up the drug cartels' billions of dollars they make every year to just a trickle, and then they can't have all the corruption and graft they pay for with American money. And the people of Mexico, there's no reason they wouldn't end up having a top 10 economy in the world because of the hard workers, the location, the natural resources. But the reason they're not is the drug cartels' corruption that the American people are funding. That would be the best thing, the most compassionate thing we could do. Mexico would have their country. They would be an incredible neighbor. That's the most neighborly thing we could do, is give them their country back free of corruption.
When you put the right policy in place, it's not just best for us, it's best for everybody, all the way around.
Yep.
You know, Congressman, you've dealt with this, fought this issue through multiple presidential administrations, Republican and Democrat. At what point do we just have to have the states do more individually, with the federal government just failing miserably at doing what is their responsibility? At what point do we call on the states to say, hey, if the feds aren't going to do it, we're just going to have to step up and do some of it ourselves?
Well, and actually that's part of the president's constitutional mandate. He is supposed to protect the states from invasion, and Biden is wholly failing in that. Other presidents haven't done a good job of it. Trump was doing the best toward securing the border, going in that direction, made great inroads. But when the federal government does not protect a state from invasion, as the president's oath requires, then a state may protect itself from invasion, and that is constitutional, and we may be moving quickly toward that point, especially when the president makes his biggest, most important speech of the year, and he doesn't even mention it. I think that's a telegraph to states like Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. They have a hard time reading tea leaves, much less a president's inferences from his silence. But I think we're very close to the point where the states are going to have to take action and protect themselves because the Border Patrol, they're getting so frustrated. People are retiring. They're not wanting to continue with the onslaught they're having to deal with.
Last question for you, so mostly unrelated, but I guess a little bit related. It is so hard to find truth these days in reporting and media, and so when we hear numbers and we hear things about the border or any of these policies, where do you look? I mean, what would you say right now for folks at home in terms of resources for newspapers to read or online resources? What do you think are good sources out there since the media has become so compromised?
Well, you take what you find in the media, you take what the government reports, and then you mix that with what you have seen yourself and with what Border Patrol are saying that have no reason to lie. And so it's much, much worse than the Biden administration is reporting. And even if you take it at what they're reporting, you realize they are allowing this nation to be destroyed. You cannot preserve a republic. You cannot keep a republic, in Franklin's words, if you do not have borders that are secured. And it wasn't a big deal when, we were early in our development and there was so much room. There was no such thing as Social Security or welfare, food stamps, any of those social programs. So people that came in, they weren't that many, and they knew that when they came in, they were going to have to take care of themselves. But now, with all the benefits that are being immediately bestowed, we can't continue much longer like this. We'll lose the republic.
I agree. I said last question, but I do have to ask, with your little secret group that of members of Congress that was, going down that road and sneaking through there, I'm sure Vice President Kamala Harris was with you, since she's the most qualified person to handle the situation.
Yeah, look, I would welcome the chance to show her what it's really like at 2 or 3 in the morning down on the border, what our Border Patrol has to face every night. And until it's happened a lot of times, it's a little unnerving, 2:30, 3 in the morning, to have a group of people you didn't see coming just all of a sudden all around you. But thank God those are people that are looking for Border Patrol. They've come across, they want to be in processed. But as the Border Patrol tell us, when they get a big group that wants to be processed like that, they know, the drug cartels know, that's taking up all of the Border Patrol's attention, and therefore they know that's when they're sending big shipments of drugs or a high-valued customer they're bringing across that they don't want to be caught. And we know terrorists are coming across our border. This country's in so much trouble because of this administration's total callousness toward the suffering that's going on. People have got to wake up, but I would love to take our vice president down there and show her what it's really like. No dog and pony shows, no PowerPoint presentations. Let's just go to the border and let me show you.
Yeah, the damage is incalculable,
It is.
and we've got to be awakened to it. Congressman, God bless you, man. We're praying for you. Thank you for standing in the gap for us.
Well, thanks so much, Rick.
Look forward to the next time.
All right, thanks so much.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back with David and Tim Barton.
Hey guys, we want to let you know about a new resource we have here at WallBuilders called The American Story. For years, people have been asking us to do a history book, and we've finally done it. We start with Christopher Columbus and go roughly through Abraham Lincoln, and one of the things that so often we hear today are about the imperfections of America, or how so many people in America that used to be celebrated or honored really aren't good or honorable people. One of the things we acknowledge quickly in the book is that the entire world is full of people who are sinful and need a Savior, because the Bible even tells us that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And yet what we see through history, and certainly is evident in America, is how a perfect God uses imperfect people and does great things through them. The story of America is not the story of perfect people, but you see time and time again how God got involved in the process and used these imperfect people to do great things that impacted the entire world from America. To find out more, go to wallbuilders.com and check out The American Story.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us, and thanks to Congressman Louie Gohmert for joining us today. And frankly, just speaking truth, David, Tim, I mean, if, like you were saying at the beginning of the program, if people really know what's going on down at the border, they're going to be very upset about how evil this is, about the humanitarian crisis, and these politicians that are actually really encouraging this. It's evil. I mean, they know how bad it is, the rape trees, the horrible things that is happening to kids, and they're letting this happen. I mean, there should be a righteous anger boiling up in America right now.
There should be, and especially when you hear, I thought some of Louie's perspective was really interesting. The cartel, which we know is behind so much of this, but they're doing so much of it because they want to overwhelm the system and put all the attention on the immigrants so that they're free to do what they want to do with drugs and sex trafficking and everything else. I mean, that was really strong.
And specifically when they have a big group go at once, right? Because now you're having to focus all your attention on this big group, and when all the attention is on the big group, then there's not agents to monitor other crossings at the border. And that was really powerful, an interesting thought as well. Even as Louie said, when these people are lining up and they have different addresses on paper in their hand, and they might start swapping addresses with people, or there's kids in their group, and they might start passing the kids around. Well, you be the mom of this one, you be the dad of this one, whatever the case is, that it's very apparent to people who are there seeing it that this is not the scenario that we've often heard about, parents being separated from their kids at the border. We know factually that many of them are not biologically related at all to the child or to the adult they are with. And this is certainly something it does seem like cartels, among other people, are using for whatever kind of leverage or purpose they can to use these mules, right? In some scenarios where Louie pointed out that these people are told that they don't have the money for it, but if they, come and work for us for so many years, then you can pay off the cartel, whatever the case is. There's obviously a system in place that's very demeaning, very damaging to these immigrants that are being used and abused coming across, and leaving these borders open or allowing for more of that to take place.
And I think, guys, it just has to be, and I know we're a family-friendly program and all that kind of stuff, but folks, you've got to realize how evil this is, the things that are happening, the abuse, not just of women, but of children, and to be in a nation that's allowing this to happen, or in some cases our government actually encouraging the crisis down there, the war that's taking place down there. We, the people, are going to have to stand up and say no more. And thankfully, even the states are standing up and saying, we're going to do something about it. If the federal government's not going to do its job under the Constitution, we're going to start doing it as the states. The evil has got to stop. And, man, we need to be praying for our border agents down there and the things that they're dealing with. But this situation is completely out of control. And for the president to ignore it, not even address it in his address to Congress, it just tells you where this administration is. We're out of time for today, folks. Be sure and visit our website, wallbuilderslive.com. You can get programs from throughout the week in the archive section there, and you can even go back several months, pick up some of the Good News Friday programs, Foundations of Freedom Thursday programs as well. And please consider, while you're there, making that one-time or monthly contribution. Supporters across the country, you make it possible for us to speak and defend truth here on WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided forever.